So I don't know, trust him or not. I tell you, yeah, love. You got to choose love. And over this next, let's give you a synopsis of what's going to happen over the next few weeks. Some people have willingly are allowing me to put them on the spot this week. And we're obviously looking at love. And folks, love comes from God. Man didn't invent it. Women, you didn't invent it. Only God invented it. And love, obviously, happens in relationships with friends, with a significant other, or your spouse, or whatever your case might be today. Grandchildren. Love is something that is of God, and and the scriptures say, not just this video we watch, but the scriptures say if you're not loving, you're not of God. Wow, that's pretty bold, isn't it, for God to tell us that? But we need to learn how to love. We don't do it perfectly, I've been married for 27 years. Yeah, 27 years, 1987. I had to do the math. 27 years and still learning how to love. Because if you're not learning how to love, then what's happened to you is you've turned love, what we'll talk about today, into a noun instead of a verb. It's just an object. It's not something that's important to you anymore that you practice. But over this last year, if you remember when we did the similar series. Last year, I helped men understand the rules of male and female relationships. Remember that? And we were right on. And everybody did okay last week. Well, ladies, I scoured the internet and I wanted to give you some insights into the male psyche, all right? One thing, I'm a man, so when I scan these, I'm like, yeah, that's true. I think of all men. And ladies, if you get these 12 things, you will help us out immensely. And I think some of the older guys will agree with this that have been married a while. Well, number one, you get it up there? For us, shopping is not a sport. Am I right, guys? Shopping is not a sport. Unless it might be a sport for you. It's not for me. What do we like to do, guys? Go in and what? Find it and go home, We're not looking for a bargain. It's not a sport for us to see how much money we can save. That's why you never send us to the grocery store, because we're not looking to save money. We're looking to buy food. All right? Anything you wear, ladies, number two, anything you wear is fine. Really, it really is. If we are in a relationship with you, we like whatever you wear. It doesn't make a difference to us. If we like you or we're in love with you, whatever you wear is fine with us, all right? Number three, anything we said 6-8 months ago is inadmissible in an argument. All comments become null and void after 7 days. So you can't bring it back up because, we have, what, guys? Forgotten what we've said. All right? Okay. All right, and number four, if something we said can be interrupted in two ways, if something we said can be interpreted two ways, and one of the ways makes you sad and angry, we meant the other one. Okay? It really is true. It's like, oh man, we made the wrong choice in our brain, and we knew it when we saw the expression on your face. All right? Number five, whenever possible, please say whatever you have to say during commercials, okay, especially tonight. Otherwise, we won't be fully listening. My family experiences all the time when Illinois is on TV. Wait for a commercial. I'm not paying attention to you. Number six, subtle hints don't work. Sometimes we just don't get it. Number seven, crying is blackmail. Use it if you must. I'll just call it what it is. It's just blackmail. Number eight, most guys own 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. What makes you think we'd be any good at choosing which pair out of 30 that you own would look great with what you are wearing? All right. Number 9, you can either ask us to do something or tell us how you want it done. It's impossible for us to do both. Am I right, guys? Thank you. All right. Amen to Ed right there. Number 10, if we like you, we don't want to mess it up but we will more than likely mess it up, not on purpose, but sometimes we just do. All right? So learn that. Number 11, all men see in only 16 colors, like Windows default settings. Peach, for example, is a fruit, not a color. Pumpkin is also a fruit. And most guys have no idea what mauve, I can't even say the word, mauve is. All right? And number 12, if we ask what is wrong and you say nothing, we will act like nothing's wrong. We know you are lying, but it's just not worth the hassle. Besides, we know you'll bring it up again later. So that's why we don't pursue those issues right at the moment, because it's not a good time to do that. All right, so there you go, ladies. That'll help you be inside of our mind and help you understand, and those are true. I scoured, everything on the internet is true. It is. I scoured several different sites for this information, and I said, do I identify with that? And I said, well, yeah, I do. For those of you who don't know me, you know me very well, and for those that do, please bear with me. But when I first met my wife, I fell in love. She didn't know it. She had no idea. She just walked into the church, and I saw her. My brother-in-law hugged her, and I said, she's mine. I'm going to marry her. She didn't know any of that. And so I actually fell in love. Was it love at first sight? Well, after reading Joel's article in the newsletter, no, it was not love at first sight. And Joel just shot me down every Thanks, Joel. I know I don't know if it was love. I don't know if it was love or whatever, but I know I wanted to marry her right then and there. And actually, I had our wedding planned after 7 months of knowing her and only been out on 2 dates. I really wanted brown in my wedding. And needless to say, that didn't happen. All right. Well, falling in love is easy to do. If you're living and breathing and you have a pulse, you can fall in love. And as I was browsing, I learned that, again, the internet, everything on the internet is true. And I think this is true because it was actually a good site. It only takes 4 minutes to fall in love. From the moment you see them, it only takes 4 minutes. Isn't that awesome? Before Dana, I fell in love with my 3rd grade teacher. You've heard that story. I was in love with her until a couple of weeks into the school year, I found out she was married. That was a bummer. Then I fell in love a couple more times before my wife entered the picture. A girl broke my heart, so I returned the favor and broke another girl's heart. How was that for a nice guy? And folks, it's easy to fall in love. It only takes 4 minutes. And then Tina Turner comes out with this song, to confuse us even more and tells us, you know the song, what love got to do with it. So I looked at the lyrics of this song, and I'm like, holy cow, they're clean. But, it depends on your thought patterns this morning. These are the songs, this is the word to the song. She says, you must understand through the touch of your hand makes my pulse react, that it's only the thrill of a boy meeting girl, opposites attract. It's physical, only logical. You must try to ignore that it means more than that. And then she says, what's love got to do with it? What's love but a second-hand emotion? What's love got to do with it? Got to do with it. Who needs a heart when a heart can be broken? That's pretty sad. That really is kind of a sad. Love has everything to do with it. But if you want to stay in love this morning, we know that the lyrics of that song are totally not true. It's a different story. And this morning, our first couple that have decided to let me put them on the spot is Kelsey and Jonathan, as you know. Just a few, you guys come on up, just a couple months ago, they got engaged and planned to be married. And so over the next few weeks, there'll be people who've been married a little bit longer, just to see, what's love got to do with it, okay? And Kelsey and Jonathan agreed to meet today, to be put on the spot today, and I've learned to love both of these people and excited to see what God's going to do through them now that they've made this commitment to join together in holy matrimony. But they're not married yet, obviously. So I gave them some pre-planned questions, so they'd have some pre-planned thoughts or not pre-planned thoughts. But here we go. This is all about staying in love. Question number 1. To the best of your knowledge, okay, just kind of a fun question, so have fun with it. You don't have to be serious. To the best of your knowledge, when did the like for each other turn into love? Was it obvious, or did it take some time to realize, hey, we're in love? Was it love at first sight? But Joel's already struck that down, so you can't answer that way. Did your relationship grow into love? So I'm going to ask ladies. Go first.
Well, I know I loved him before he knew he loved me. I knew that. But it grew for us, I think. We were friends before, and
Okay. What about you, Jonathan?
I would say, yeah, she's right. She knew it before I did. I'm old and set in my ways and stubborn. And most of you that know me out there, like, that's the truth, preach it. So it took me a while to warm up to the idea of love, and I'm still learning, I guess, what real love really is.
Awesome. That's usually the way it works, just so you know the girl sees it before you do. Yeah, except me, yeah. Well, I don't know if it was love or not. I don't know, so if you knew me as a young man, it probably wasn't love. Well, question number 2, when you realize, hey, we're in love, you guys made that commitment, that relationship started to grow, and how did your view of the other person change, or did it change? How did you know the other person was the one? What happened inside of you? What clicked? What made you say, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person, Jonathan? What was it for you? What was that turning point?
Most of my life, I feel like I've just viewed love as the emotion, which has gotten me in trouble. And it sounds maybe too scientific, but when you make a checklist of everything that you want in somebody, I think it's sometimes good to stick with that and not let emotion play so much of a role in your decision making. And I think what it is about Kelsey is that she's really helped changing my view and what I think about love. I'm a very selfish person. And in the other past relationships, I've probably completely made it all about me and how I feel. Because I don't feel good in this, I'm just going to get out now. And maybe I'm still that way to a degree. But I think that what makes me want to make this commitment with her is more about her. I know how much she loves and cares for me. And I'm not saying I don't love and care for her. But
the truth is coming out here.
just knowing that how forgiving she is, how patient she is with me. There's something about her that helps me view love, I guess, in a little bit different way than I have before. And that's part of me just finally growing up a little bit. But it's part of, a lot of it is her being patient with me and demonstrating love to me so I can learn what it really is.
Awesome. What about you, Kelsey? When did you realize all that? I know you said it earlier, but when did it actually click? Say, yeah, I want to marry this guy.
it clicked for me when he could deal with my crazy.
Just kidding.
I didn't really have the best example of love in my home growing up, and so even me showing love or wanting love, like wanting to be shown love, is hard for me. I don't. He says all that stuff. I'm like, okay, but I guess I've never really asked for love, I guess. So it's just easier for me to love him. But then when I wanted him to show me love and he didn't want to, love me. And, but he did because he's scared and he shouldn't be.
Yeah. So how did your view of each other change? You know, obviously it changed. How's it? Has your view of him changed since, boy, you kind of said it, you kind of hinted at it. Did your view of him change after you're like, man, wow, if he can deal with that?
I don't know that my view of him really changed because I always knew, I think deep in my heart, what he was capable of, just because of the type of person that he is and how he lives out his life and how much he loves the church and the people in the church. But making it a deeper relationship on a more committed level was difficult for him.
Okay.
But once he made that decision, I told multiple people, it's like he just transformed into the man that I knew that he was.
Wow. So there was an outward change. I mean, as far as attitude and spirit. Okay. All right, guys. Now these are the $64,000 questions. If you get these two right,
Do we really get the money?
no. No, you really don't get the money. But if you disagree with my sermon this morning, no, I'm just kidding. Now, what do you think it is going to take to stay in love? You know, you fall in love, you made this commitment to one another, you're willing to sign your name on the bottom line and say, I'm committed to love this person the rest of my life. So what did you, in your perspective right now, where you're at, what do you think it's going to take to stay in love? And don't worry, it's all different for all of us. But what do you think it's going to take?
Well, Butch Addison told me just say yes, dear.
Okay.
So I think that would go a long way. Just seeing all the stuff on the screen in the video, it's like, that's hard. That's really hard to do.
Yeah.
I don't think I realize, even still, I'm still working on it, but it's difficult to you're one selfish sinner and another selfish sinner deciding it would be good to be together. That doesn't make a lot of sense when you think of it that way, right? But we are. I'm self-centered and I'm selfish, and I know that. I think it takes, so in that sense, it takes a lot of sacrifice.
Okay.
Being willing to see her side of things and not always having the I'm right mentality, which is hard for me. I've been single or not married for my whole adult life, and I've lived on my own, and that's hard, to realize that my viewpoint is not the only viewpoint that matters. So I think just being willing to give up of yourself and your own wants and own desires and make them our wants and our desires, and communicating with each other. And I kind of gave her a couple of nudges on that 10, 12 things that guys think. Just being communicating back and forth and saying, this is what I want, this is what I need. Can we work this out, that kind of thing. So I think communication and giving up yourself, sacrificing.
Okay. And yes, dear works too.
Yes,
just so
dear
you-
works. And just trying to remember too, I guess, I don't know, get advice and wisdom from people who have been able to maintain a good, long, healthy marriage, I think would be wise on our part and anybody's part, really.
Yeah. What about you, Kelsey? What do you think?
I agree with the majority of what he said. I know how to, I don't know. I'm learning how to cook, so I'll maintain our relationship by meeting him. So.
There's something to that, just so you know.
But I really agree with everything that he said. Communication is key. And as we progressed in our relationship, we've communicated a lot better than when we started. And that's been really beneficial for us to not kind of hold in the hurt feelings, or even for me, maybe getting upset at things that don't really need to be taken that way. And sometimes I still get upset, but I don't necessarily bring it to his attention because I want to evaluate it myself and just get over it, because it's me being selfish and not him needing to do what I want.
That's
We're
good.
in church, so we should say something about God. And that is this. No, I did not.
No, I'm going to do that.
Oh, that's in the sermon.
That's right.
Now, just staying anchored in His Word and having a
Sure. Yeah.
relationship with Him is going to be crucial to our relationship. Even this week, in times that I've been frustrated or we didn't see eye to eye on a couple of things, it was devotionals and scripture reading that led me to a different thought that helped me in a situation.
Wow, that's good. Thank you.
Where if I wasn't in the Word and I wasn't reading, I probably would have just, let bitterness or anger kind of fester inside of me and tell her to get over it or whatever. And instead of realizing, whoa, slap in the face, I'm the one that's in the wrong here. And I think that will be a key for us too.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. So what do you think is going to be the hardest part then? You've kind of alluded to it. If you just want to, what do you think is going to be the hardest part? What do you think, as you guys have talked together and the devotions you've read, and some of the things that you've talked about in marriage, and, what do you think is going to be the hardest part for you two?
I already know for me, I've already talked about just the fact that I have been calling all my own shots for my whole life.
Gotcha.
That would be the hardest thing for me to share that.
What about you? What do you think is going to be the hardest thing for you to stay in love? And if it's nothing, just say nothing. That's all right.
I let myself go.
I'm just kidding. Probably maintain it. I like immediate satisfaction. I live in a world and work in a work environment where you plan ahead and you have a time that you have to get everything done. You schedule everything, and I guess just being patient with him in decision making, or even being, because I know that he is giving up a lot, whereas I feel like I'm gaining. And
You're both gaining, just so you know.
and so I guess just still remembering that even though it's taking him a little while, he still loves me, and being patient with that.
All right. Boy, if you guys live out half of what you said the rest of your life, you're going to be all right. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for willing to put on the spot then. That's harder than what it looks, just so you know. And you kind of heard what they said. It's true. Boy, it's hard. And those of you who have been married, and those of you, if you've ever been in love with someone, there's pain involved. There's sacrifice involved. Those things are involved. And one of the things that they said, and not only have they fallen in love, they've made a decision that they are willing to love each other the rest of their life. And to me, that's the key to staying in love. And they also made that decision. They want this covenant relationship we call marriage, as you know now. That's an option. It's become more of an option. To sign your name on a line and to make a covenant and a promise to someone, in our culture today, has become an option. If I read it right this past week, there are more people living together than there were during the 60s. In the 60s, actually, 75% of couples living together were married. You believe that? And then in our day today, and you can take a look. You find the stats. It's all over the internet. All over the internet, you can find it. But boy, to make that commitment and to join together in holy matrimony and go and sign that covenant and say, I'm committed to you the rest of my life, is a big deal. Like I said, it only takes 4 minutes to fall in love. But it takes a decision to stay in love. And 2,000 years ago, Jesus gave us the foundation of what it takes to stay in love. It's so simple, it's brilliant, so obvious. We miss it, and when you say it, we say, really, that's it? There's got to be more to it. Well, it comes from John 13:34, and it says, So I'm giving you a new commandment. Did you hear that? I'm giving you a what? A new commandment. Okay, if it's new, that means were they not loving each other before? I always wrestled with that. But he says, I'm giving you a new commandment. Love one another. But what's different about this is that Jesus is taking what we normally use as a noun and he turns it into a verb. You know, we fall in love, we make love. In the month of February, we celebrate love. But Jesus here gives us an imperative. He is giving us a commandment here to love each other. You know, I found this story about this guy. He was a minister. His name is George Crane. And he tells of a wife that came into his office who was full of hatred. He was also a newspaper columnist who was full of hatred towards her husband. And not only did she want to get rid of him, and she wanted to give even. In her words, she says, before I divorce him, I want him to hurt as much as he has hurt me. Well, Dr. Crane suggested an ingenious plan. He says, go home and ask if you really, and as if you really love your husband. Tell him how much he means to you. Praise him for every decent trait he has. Go out of your way to be kind and considerate and be as generous as you possibly can. Spare no efforts to please him and to enjoy him. Make him believe you love him. After you've convinced him of your undying love and that you cannot live without him, then drop the bomb. Tell him you're getting a divorce. That will really hurt him. Well, with revenge in her eyes, she smiled and exclaimed, beautiful, beautiful will he ever be surprised. And she did it with enthusiasm, acting as if. For 2 months, she showed love and kindness and listening and giving and reinforcing and sharing. She did everything the doctor had told her to do. And when she didn't return, Crane called, are you ready now to go through with the divorce? Divorce, she said. Never. I discovered that I really do love him. Her actions had changed her feelings, and emotion resulted in emotion, and the ability to love is established not so much by fervent promise. The ability to love is established not so much by a fervent promise, words, as often it is repeated deeds. In other words, action. You know, she started doing outward things of love. And who changed in that process? She did. And a big reason, I believe, an observation I've made, a big reason I believe of why a lot of people fall out of love, I mean, some who've been married 20, 30, some, 30, even 40 years. Because the big reason why they fall out of love is because they turn love into an object. They turn it into a noun. And the feeling of love is withered away, and now reality hits, that to stay in love, it's going to cost you something. If you're going to stay in love with a person, it's going to cost you something. Whether it be a friend or like we're talking about here in a boy and girl relationship, or a mom and dad, mom and dad and kid relationship, whatever relationship it is, when you love someone, and this is not rocket science, I understand it, but a lot of times we forget that sometimes it does hurt and it does cost us something. And the reason it hurts and the reason it costs us something is because we do love, and we are putting that love into motion. As you heard in this story, and as you heard even in Kelsey and Jonathan, boy, attitude has to change. You got to change your routines. You got to think of someone other than yourself. To me, that's the hardest part about marriage. To think of someone other than yourself. I didn't do that very good for 5 years. And folks, all of those things, those changes that need to happen in us, boy, when that love turns into a noun, when it's really meant to be a verb, Jesus turned it into a verb and said, hey, it's action, it's doing something. First of all, it's a decision. Yeah, I'm going to commit myself. And then it's action and doing something. Folks, the words just don't cut it. You can say I love you all you want, but if it's not followed up with action, it's not love. That's, again, true in any kind of relationship. That's to say, getting what you want from the relationship. But if you really love is action, boy, and attitudes and routines change. And 1 Corinthians 13, which you saw in that clip, tells us what love has to do with it. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not demand its own way. Love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. Love figures out how to serve the other person in a meaningful way. Love is not jealous. Love is not envious. Love is gentle, and there's more in 1 Corinthians 13. And these are all things we are to do to stay in love and to make love happen. Love just doesn't happen just because you sit in the same room together. And it just doesn't happen even when you say, I do. And it just doesn't happen when you ask someone, hey, will you marry me? And they say yes. Love doesn't happen. I mean, what happens inside of us is euphoria, adrenaline rush, and all kinds of things going on inside of us. But love doesn't happen. That's really not love. Love is what you do after you say, hey, I'm committed to you the rest of your life. I'm committed to you. I'm committed to loving you through your craziness. I'm committed to loving you through, good times, bad times, sickness, health. You know the vows. You've heard them. It's all action. But what we do, especially after years of the danger of happening, especially if you've been married for years, is turning it into a noun, into an object. And we don't. Not only do we not say the words anymore, but those actions just aren't there. Well, Pastor, if I'm doing the actions, do I need to say the words? Well, yeah, you still need to say the words. Well, if I say the words, do I still need to do the action? Well, yeah, you still need to do both. It's both and, not either or. But when you love someone and you're in a relationship with them, and they're not willing to change that attitude, not change as in their personality, but mature in attitude and mature in the things of their life. Boy, you really got to look, do I really love that person? But like I said, a big reason why they fall out of love is that we turn love into an object. And folks, there are things we are to do. These things, 1 Corinthians 13, go home and memorize it. These are the things we are to do to stay in love and to make the love happen in the relationship. Is it easy? Ask anybody who's been married 6 months. Is it easy? No, it's not. And Jonathan alluded to it. Boy, you can't think just about yourself anymore. And that's the hardest part of two people joining together. It's the hardest thing in friendships, if it's a really close friendship and you disagree. And in kid and parent relationships. I mentioned a couple last year that I counseled, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I'd counseled them separately, and in fact, it was right about this time I was doing that. And I told you last year, my conversation with the wife, she believed that she was tricked into marrying. She was tricked into marrying her husband. Those are the words from her mouth. I talked to her. She said, he tricked me. I know he did. Well, guess what? Those two decided to turn love into a verb. They decided to follow Jesus' command and love one another. And now, boy, it's not happily ever after yet. But you know what? They were living separately, but now they are back together. Folks, love doesn't just happen. We need to make love happen. Just because, like I said, we can fall in love in 4 minutes, and just because we can say the words with extreme ease, it doesn't mean you love the other person. Jesus is telling us to do something to make love happen. We just can't sit around and say the words. We need to demonstrate it even when we don't like the other person. That's really easy to do, isn't it? When you don't like them, it's really easy to love them, isn't it? Then Jesus teaches us, just as I have loved you, you should love each other. Now think about this for a minute. Jesus didn't just say, I love you. Okay, what did Jesus do? Anybody want to guess what Jesus did? He showed it by how? Thank you. Yeah. Laid down his life. He didn't say, hey, walk around everybody and say, oh, I love you, crowd. Oh, I love you, crowd. I love you, crowd. And didn't send him to heaven. No. The words that he was speaking were followed up by actions, and probably the greatest action you can do in the life of any person is to lay down your life for them. Now, Jesus just didn't say the words. He demonstrated, he lived it out. He says, just as I, and he says, just as I have loved you, go love each other in the same way. Folks, Jesus loved others knowing he would not be loved back. Jesus loved others knowing they would fail and disappoint him. Jesus loved others knowing they would nail him to a cross. And he says, love each other in the same way. Guess what? If you're in a relationship, that person is going to disappoint you. They're going to do things you disagree with. You kind of heard it here. They're going to do things you disagree with. They're going to make you angry. They're going to do things like, that make you go like that. And make you boil inside and you want to say something, but if you say something, it's nothing. And then it boils inside and it builds up inside and all of a sudden the big D word comes out. Jesus loved others knowing he would not be loved back. And again, Jesus went through pain. Folks, if you want to stay in love, love the other way. Love the other the way Jesus has loved you. Think about that. That would change a lot of relationships in this world. Christian relationships, those who know Jesus. Christian couples get divorced too now. Well, they always have. It's just big news now. But if you want to stay in love, love the other way Jesus has loved you. If you want to stay in love, Ephesians 5, he says, submit to one another. We do like the verse part of that. In Ephesians 5, wives, submit to your husband. But guys, if we read that a little bit farther, you go on to verse 21, it says, and further submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. If you're submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ, it doesn't make a difference who's right or wrong in an argument. It doesn't make a difference who says, I'm sorry first. Someone needs to say it. It doesn't make a difference who wins the argument. Doesn't really make a difference who wins the argument. But our goal in an argument is to what? Win! To prove what? I'm right and they're wrong. So what? He says to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And the quicker you submit to one another, the quicker you can kiss and make up. And that's the best part. It really is. That's the best part about arguing. That's the best part about being mad at each other. If you submit yourself, and Jonathan again alluded to it, that scripture and that devotional thought totally changed his attitude in that moment. Because the way I'm hearing, he submitted himself to the lordship of Christ in that moment and said, no, I'm not going back to the way I was. Well, obviously, the first step we need to do is to submit ourselves to Christ. He must be Lord of your life. It's impossible. Do you know it's impossible to love your spouse the way they deserve or love that other person the way they deserve to be loved without first understanding that God loves you and entered into that relationship? We think we know when we enter, and especially in marriage, we think we know what it takes, to love that person. Folks, we do not know how to love one another. That's why he wrote it in 1 Corinthians 13. Be kind to them. Be patient with them. They're going to mess up. They're going to fail you. They are going to disappoint you. Think about when you want to be right and win the argument. Think about what Jesus wanted to win the argument too, don't you think? But what did he do? Yeah. He said, hey. He didn't say anything. But the first thing we need to do is to submit ourselves to Christ. And once I figured it out, when I was able to make love a verb, I was able to humble myself and clean the toilet. I hate that. I really do. But I was able to humble myself and clean the toilet. I was able to humble myself and say I was sorry. I was able to serve without expecting to be served. When I turned love from a noun into a verb, all of them, I added, everything inside of me began to change. And I say that to say, folks, we don't really know how to love, even after years and years of marriage. A lot of people think they got love figured out. I would argue, no, you don't. You've turned love into a noun. You need to serve that other person. You need to give to that other person. You need to be generous to that other person. It's not about you anymore. It's not about getting your way. It's not about being right. It's not about any of those things. It's about figuring out how I can best serve that other individual which I've committed to love. And that's not just for guys. That's for ladies as well. Well, ladies, you would do us a favor by reading those 12 and memorizing them. All right? That really would help us. But yesterday, we buried Mary Fortney, and Mary and Jean, there's some of you who've known them all their life. I met them at the end. Never had I seen love such demonstrated in that relationship. He's in the wheelchair, and you know how big Mary was. She's scrawny, and like their kids told me, she loved to take naps, so physical activity was not her thing, But what she did for him to make him feel, like a man, that he was a whole man, she loved him the same way as if he had both legs and both arms. She never stopped. It didn't change because he changed. And what a picture. And both of them were committed to Christ and to knowing Christ. They were committed to one another. But their first and foremost commitment, at least my conversation with their kids, was their love, not just for this church, but their love for God. Totally changed them. And totally changed, and as they grew and matured to love one another, they just were willing to change in the sense of maturing. And it all began with that relationship with Christ. This morning we're going to take communion. We're going to do it in a bit different way. You don't have to come forward today. We're going to serve you in your pew. We got some guys who are going to come up here and this you're going to pass the elements down. Wait till you get all the elements, and we'll spend some time singing and spend some time in reflection as well. But this morning, if you don't know Christ, if you don't know who he is, I can guarantee if you don't know him, I can guarantee you if you get to know him, he will teach you how to love another person. Even if you've been hurt in your past, he will teach you how to love that other person and maybe even love yourself. But as we pass out the elements, what I'd like for you to do is just reflect on, first of all, am I committed to Christ? To me, that's the most important relationship. That relationship's more important to me than my relationship with my wife. Because everything I do for her comes out of my relationship with Christ. Me and Jonathan, we would have been best buddies. I could have said the exact same words that he said. But because I made this commitment to follow Christ, and I made this commitment to love my wife, I signed the dotted line, realizing I'd messed up, in those first few years. Someone needed to grow up, and it wasn't my wife. Something inside of me needed to grow up. And in that moment, boy, this honest truth. I went and prayed and recommitted my life to Christ first. Because I was doing a terrible job. And then like John, reading through the scriptures and studying them and saying, oh my stars, I've read these over and over. I've always looked at love as a noun. And when it turned into a verb for me, I'm hoping it's gotten better. You'll hear in a couple weeks anyway, if it's gotten better. So today, as you take the elements, if you're not in love, you'll fall in love someday. Maybe you'll have, a great friendship with someone, or, if that doesn't happen for you, But today, God is really asking, first of all, are you committed to Him? Ladies, are you committed to Him? Guys, are we committed to Him? So that we can submit to one another out of the reverence for Christ. So as we serve you, again, stay in your pews today. We'll pass them down. As you get the elements, just begin to reflect on those questions, if you would. Ushers, if you would come.